And we're ready to go. We are going to start with the stewardship report. Which is again, a vast amount of information. Do any staff want to make comments on anything that was provided in the report or additions to their comments?
Maybe not, that was provided, but things have changed daily. Yeah, just so we were hosting this Washington Conservation Corps program, and Shauna can maybe talk about that a little bit more, but an outcome of that, slightly out of order, our phase 3 trail at Beaver Marsh opened last Sunday, the Indian Trail. So we got that to a place we felt comfortable putting signs up, punching through on either side. So that's a big milestone to go through. And I tried to do a quick math, and so it just occurred to me like, wow, we've actually had a bunch of different groups and people work on this, and ranging from a team from REI that were volunteers that designed clothing and gear for REI. They were our very first folks on the trail. The Islands Conservation Corps. I don't know that we have the Youth Conservation Corps on this one. I don't think so. And then 2 different Washington Conservation Corps crews, and then just our just awesome, amazing group of local volunteers. So I think sum total was something around 55 to 58 different people over the course of the last 9 months worked on this little half-mile trail. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so excited to get that done. Yeah, and Shauna, I don't know if you want to comment on the crew and.
Yeah, absolutely. This crew in particular, I was reached out by WCC back in March, wondering if we would be interested in sponsoring a affinity crew. In particular, this would be a queer associated affinity crew in which members from Washington Conservation Corps could apply for this particular project. And I said, yes, that would be awesome. And so members from all over Western Washington who identified as being queer and were interested in participating in this particular, they call it a spike, where they go and travel to different locations and do work for a sponsor. So there were 8 members and 1 supervisor who all applied, and they were out here for the last 8 days. They left yesterday morning on the ferry, and it was an incredible experience having them out here. They were predominantly here to have that affinity with each other and have that connection and network, and they represent a historically really marginalized and underrepresented community within conservation. We worked on Lopez this past Tuesday and had the opportunity to overlap with Bree of BLM, who was hosting a women's affinities crew with the American Hiking Society. And it was this crazy, incredible overlap. There were 16 of the American Hiking Society members, and we all went to Lopez Hill and helped Amanda with the trail. And watching that kind of collaboration and fostering of community was really incredible. And I know I've, since they have left, gotten a lot of feedback from the program, the members, the supervisor as well, just expressing like thanks and gratitude for being able to provide this experience. And it was certainly something that was quite impactful to witness as well, and felt really cool to be a part of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we also, the other folks that came and chatted with them as well. They set up the.
Yeah, they had the opportunity to meet other like queer identifying folks within the San Juan Islands community who had been members of or participants in conservation oriented careers for a long period of time. They could like share their experiences and ask questions and talk about resources and strategies of maintaining identity within the workplace, or being able, how do you self-advocate? How do you deal with people who are not like understanding or maybe perpetuating violent discourse? And it was really, I mean, fabulous conversations that were had. So it was a neat time.
Wow, wonderful.
I don't know if Marilyn mentioned earlier that she joined us on Henry Island. I think some of you are in a meeting with her from Henry Island. And so you guys worked with her for a little bit as well.
Where I was on Zoom, I was walking, trying not to fall down, and I was pulling thistles all at the same time.
What was the age range?
18 to 25. And then the supervisor was 30, mid 30s.
And Breeze Group, same, or,
No, Breeze Group was a pretty large age range. I think the youngest person was maybe 30 and the oldest gal was in her late 70s.
Yeah.
I would say mostly late 50s to late 60s. And they were from all over the country as
that's
well.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
super, and they all like connected and exchanged information and
Sounds really
it
rich.
was so very silly.
Thanks for Amanda to,
Mhm.
wrangling a 30-person work
I was
party.
gonna say.
Hey, Amanda, tell us next time and we'll join you.
Any questions from commissioners for any stewards in terms of the report or beyond?
Amanda here on Lopez. Yeah, that was really fun to have that kind of super crew descend on Lopez Hill. We worked on the new trail, which has made it pretty far to the end of our property. And then the next section will be on our trail easement through the Lopez Community Land Trust. So that's coming along really well. And then we also worked with the American Hiking Society. That was Breeze Group, again at Spencer Spit yesterday. And that trail is ready to open. I even posted the sign, the day use, the land bank day use sign when we finished up yesterday. So I'll work with Tanya on maps and opening info for that. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, big volunteer week, and getting a lot of work done on Lopez. It's great.
Yeah, that's great. How about those fires on the Spit Road for 4th of July?
Yeah, I put that in there. I mean, most people who watch the Lopez fireworks show, as soon as the fireworks ended, it was very clear that there was a fire on Bayshore Road, which happened. That one was not on the land bank property, but just north of it. But they, they're prepared for those. And they put it out really quickly.
Was that a result of the fireworks? That fire?
Oh yeah.
And the finale went off, and then it's just all that quiet, and then you look and there's this little amber, it wasn't little, the north end one was pretty big from where we were, and then another one started up mid-spit, and we're just like, wow. How's that going? And then it went out, so good, yeah, then it went out, yeah. Any other input? I was impressed by the size of these culverts, Peter. That was when I saw the culverts. You guys wrangling those things, I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. So yeah, this is Peter on Orcas. We had a great tour of the North Shore property yesterday. Turnout was good and a lot of interest. The tour happened about 30 minutes after we closed up the new trenches for the electrical lines and new water line from the well to the garage. A new fiber optic conduit went into that trench. So it was kind of amazing timing. They wrapped up, reopened the road, and then the first early bird tour attendee showed up just minutes later. So, and while that was going on, Andrew was wrapping up several days of work with Rain Shadow Consulting on the LSR project on the south side of Turtleback. So it was a busy week, but a good one.
I really like the before and after pictures of the culverts, or the new culverts and the old culverts. That really tells a story.
Good.
The old culvert.
Yeah.
Yikes. Any other questions? All right, thank you, you guys, as always. I love those pictures, they tell it a lot. Outreach and communication from Tanya.
What time is it then? 30, sorry, I gotta keep track of it. Well, the proof, we're almost to the end of the line for the annual report. A few of you have had helped prove it, so thank you. And I am turning towards the county fair and coming up with a setup for that for the tent. And I was gonna say for farmer's market, we can maybe be a little more specific in August for Lopez if you want. For what now? And we can talk about that offline, what might be helpful. And the county fair is really what's consuming me right now. And then also, the stewardship reports are online now. I've had a chance, if not, I can send you the link again. If it seems, I put it where I think it seems to make sense to find it. Feedback would be great if it doesn't seem like it's in the right spot. We are limited on the menu and trying to keep things clean, so, that's always something to think about. And then organizing. We just finished the newsletter that came out for summer and posting, so that's great, Amanda. That the trail opened and the post went out this morning for Beaverton Marsh Trail for the new pintail, which is I like how Doug described it to me. So instead of having just a loop now, it's a figure eight. So when I was little, I used to make my eights like circles instead of another circle on top or snowman. But anyway, and we'll organize, I'm working with the Trails Committee to host a guided hike or walk, I guess, there for the October Know Your Islands walk for the San Juan Island Trails Committee. And I think that's everything. Unless there's questions.
Newsletter was really nice.
Oh, good, good. Hopefully it all made sense. And hopefully the stewardship report worked out because that was my formatting this time. Thank goodness everybody else puts in their wording, but yeah. Realize, oh, Erin leaves some big shoes to fill, so. Try to think like Erin thinks. It's not easy.
Any questions for Tanya? All right, so now we will, thank you, Tanya. Now's the opportunity for our second public comment period. If there's anyone here or out there that would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Okay. Future agenda items, this, I just want to review or summarize all the stuff we just talked about during the earlier part of this meeting. So the August meeting, the next meeting will be, one of the things that'll come back to that is land management and fire risk. We had some preliminary discussions last month. So Lincoln's going to bring that back. Hopefully we will bring back the acquisition process document for your review and to look at. So that's our 2 August things. And then in September, to try to recap, we're going to move the regular meeting to the 8th. And next month, we will discuss Wattmouth here. I mean, right,
Yes.
That's our commission. That's right. So that by the time we get to the September meeting with the public, we will have already gotten a leg up on that.
And the budget, which is described here as being October, it's gonna have to be September.
Right. So the September meeting will be on the 8th on Lopez. And with the primary goals, the Wattmouth discussion and maybe the budget, if you have your numbers, but people are penciling in a special meeting on September 15th for budget only. That's what I remember. That sounds good to everybody.
May I, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Who's that? Go ahead. That's
That-
clear.
I was just gonna say, may I suggest also the wetland mitigation topic for September?
Mhm. Okay, on the 8th, okay. Thank you.
And I would like, at some point, I think we're really full, August and September is further discussion about tribal relations. And how we move forward on that.
Right, and
I feel like we have a lot to learn there.
well, in the meantime, before the September 8th meeting,
We have the.
I think you left the room, yeah, if you could have some discussion with Lincoln and give him some ideas on who to be reaching out to that might hopefully encourage some participation, and we try to meet with them well in advance of the September 8th, so we have some of their input by then. That'd be great.
So I have a suggestion. I don't know if this makes more sense, but if we called our September 8th meeting a special meeting focused on what now, on Lopez, would it make some sense to move all the regular business to our regular meeting date and just call that a regular meeting? It depends on how much time we want to focus on that particular issue, but it sort of highlights it a little bit more.
I'm not opposed to that, putting this people are, that would be a full commitment to 2 meetings that month, which is, I don't know, what do you think?
I love meetings.
I know. you do. It's hard to get them not to schedule. I think that, I don't know, what is it, what do you think?
I think that
September-
makes good sense.
September 8th is Watmow, and September 15th is a regular business meeting with the budget. That makes it simpler. And
On the off chance or likelihood, I don't know which, that the inner island is not running, how do we get to Lopez? Somebody have a boat, Maryland, you wanna drive us?
I'm now clear on the bigger county boat.
what?
Yeah. I got checked off last week.
Maybe we should go there for
Yeah,
that
I
day.
can go through this.
We need some field trips.
Avoid the.
Yeah.
Book it for the 8th.
Yeah, see,
Avoid the ferry.
yeah, let's just avoid the ferry.
Yeah, hopefully Michael will be there too.
I'm off, maybe.
Right. Okay, well then let's,
Good question.
let the minutes reflect that we decided to have a special meeting that focused on the Watmow edition on the 8th. And a regular business meeting with the first budget run through on the 15th.
Special meeting 9/8, Watmow edition only. And then sticking with regular.
Yeah. Wow.
So, clarification, having said that and thinking about Peggy's request, would it make sense to have the tribal discussion as part of the what? What, no, wait a minute, am I doing this right? Maybe it's, which meeting should we have that at?
Well,
I
the
don't
goal
know
would be,
whether that should be a general discussion on Lopez or a regular commission meeting here.
hopefully we will have tribal input
Yeah.
for that meeting, and I would focus on that. Because I think, I don't know, I mean, but I'm open to anything. I think working on our relationship, our general building that relationship. I wouldn't necessarily do it at that meeting.
Which meeting were you talking about?
The September 8th, when we were talking about Watmow, so
You would not focus on.
I don't think
Yeah,
so.
Okay.
I think that, I thought the idea was there's outreach ahead of time
Mhm.
and you invite them to come and participate, but that you're doing the outreach ahead of time.
We would outreach and hopefully meet with them before that meeting and have their input, but not discussing, just building relationship with the tribes at that meeting. I think that should maybe go back a month or so.
Well, we might want to review
Well, we're gonna learn
all of
something.
it at the 15th.
Yeah, could be. We're gonna learn a lot in the next 6 weeks about how successful we are.
For the minutes, Krista, I lost track of what's happening in August.
I'm shocked.
For the future agenda.
August is, we're gonna talk about, do a commission's focus on the Watmow edition. We're going to hopefully look at the acquisition document. And we're gonna do what wildlife risk and climate resilience. We're bringing that back and that's it for that one. So, and then in the August regular meeting, we'll bring back wetland mitigation and the budget and everything else that we normally do. But in the September 8th meeting, which will be a special meeting, will be on Lopez to discuss and get public input on the Watmow edition. And sometime before that date, we will hopefully be meeting with some tribal representatives to get their input on Watmow. Does that help?
Yes, now I have it all.
I love the putting this stuff on the calendar now.
Okay, so now we're gonna take another break, great. We're 10 minutes ahead, so the next portion of the meeting will be strategic plan and do you want to stick to 11 o'clock in case people are coming back because it says 11 o'clock on the thing, or do we want to just I don't know if you have lunch here, how you wanna segue into that.
I'm picking up lunch at 11:30.
Okay. And are the consultants here?
They're here.
Done.
Yeah, let's go. With the-
Isn't it
We're
done
here.
when-
We can start there in the back room. Okay. Well. I would suggest that we go ahead and start now with the strategic plan, get their presentation, lunch may come in at 11:30, that might be a natural break, and then we can move into the discussion with them with our lunches.
Sounds good.
Excellent. And behind door number 3, we can invite our consultants in.
That's.
Did you? You got that?
Yeah, we updated.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna mute it for just a moment. You don't have to hear all the. This is for everyone online. It'll take about 5 minutes. I'll go ahead and pause. That's great.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I just want to introduce myself to all of you. I'm Hillary Wilkinson, and I'm here with my colleague Kate. And we will do more formal introductions of ourselves in a second, but I just wanted to say thank you for having us here. I know you've already been in a meeting for the last couple of hours, I believe, and we have you for another approximately 2.5 hours. So thank you for hanging in there with us. We're gonna, if you need to get up, move around, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourselves, but we're gonna kind of dive in and make sure you're all kind of on the same page, head the same direction on this process that we're all about to embark on together called strategic planning. So I'm just gonna do a little introduction of myself because Lincoln and the rest of the interview panel got a chance to meet me and my colleague, but the rest of you have not. So I want you to get a sense of who we are and who we aren't. So that you kind of know who you're going to be working with over the next 4-ish, 5-ish, 6-ish months. So I'm Hillary Wilkinson. I'm with a company called Triangle and Associates. We are out of the Bellingham office of Triangle, but their headquarters are in Seattle. And they are sort of like the national leader on conflict resolution in the natural resources arena. So they've been doing that work for about 30-35 years. I had a little tiny company called Beta, which some of you might have heard of, that got bought by Triangle at the end of last year. We did very similar work. So essentially the work we do in the world is helping advance conservation and sustainability efforts all over the country. My work has been primarily in the Puget Sound, Salish Sea region, and I have also worked quite a bit in the San Juans, because I used to work for the state of Washington with the agency that preceded the Puget Sound Partnership, which I don't know if some of you have heard of it, Puget Sound Action Team. Anyone heard of the Puget Sound Action Team? Yay! We've got some old timers. I worked for them for about 5 years, and I was the liaison to San Juan County, where I had the opportunity to get paid to come out to the San Juans, which was fantastic, and work with the Marine Resources Committee, work on salmon recovery efforts when Chinook were first listed. I just helped work with various entities that were doing marine conservation work. I was sort of the state liaison to bring kind of technical and financial resources. So that was my introduction to all of the amazing work going on out here. I fell in love with San Juans, and I always look for opportunities to work out here. So when they contacted me on a topic that I do a lot of, which is strategic planning, I was so excited. So thank you for contacting me. I previously worked with the San Juan Preservation Trust on their strategic planning process. That's, I think, what got me, I'm sorry, on your radar. And that was a wonderful experience too. I know there's a lot of kind of overlap and collaboration that occurs between the two organizations, which is great. But anyway, I'm really happy to be here. I think that's enough about me. There's a lot more to me. Oh, I will just say this, you probably picked up on this from a little bit of my bio. My background is really environmental science, natural resources, conservation work. And in the course of doing that work, I realized that where my real sort of superpower, I would say, was in sort of bringing people together through difficult decision-making processes that helped advance conservation initiatives. That's like, it took me many, many years to figure out that that's where my strengths were. But once I realized that, I started doing the kind of facilitated efforts that I'm doing now. Strategic planning kind of naturally came into that mix. If you had asked me 15 years ago if I would lead strategic planning efforts, I probably would have laughed in your face, because having been on the receiving end of them, I'd been like, yeah, absolutely not, no, thank you. But then I realized as I matured and started to understand things a little bit better, how incredibly important strategic planning is, how important it is to do it well. And especially now with the world I kind of consider pretty tumultuous, with incredibly challenging issues confronting organizations like yours, it's more important than ever, in my opinion. So that's all I'll say about myself. Hopefully that's a good sense of who I am. We both live in Bellingham, so we're obviously not from here, but we're across the pond, so not too far. I'm gonna introduce Kate, let her introduce herself. Go ahead, Kate.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Galambos, and I'm supporting Hillary on this project. I've been with Triangle and Associates just over, I think, 3 or 4 months. But jam-packed 3 or 4 months. Prior to that, my background is really in natural resources and land management. I came from working with Skagit County Natural Resource Division in the habitat group, so focused on fish habitat and riparian restoration down in Skagit. Prior to that, I was working for the Land Douglas Land Trust out in Wenatchee. So I'm familiar with organizations like the Land Bank and like San Juan Preservation Trust, and really passionate about the work that you all accomplish. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, and I'm really happy to have Kate. We're gonna be a team. I'll be the lead, but we're gonna be really working very closely together. Kate's gonna be doing a lot of capturing information that happens at meetings, but she'll also be playing a facilitated role as well as we go forward. So you'll be kind of working with both of us, and we'll be a pretty tight team as we do this. But Kate's experience with the Schland Douglas Land Trust was one of the reasons why I wanted her working with me on this particular project, because of her familiarity with similar types of entities. So with that, you've heard that from us. One of the main things I want to accomplish today is get to know each other a little bit better. I'm assuming you all know each other fairly well, but I guarantee you in this process that we're embarking on, you'll get to know each other a lot better and positively. So, but for us to be as effective and as successful as we can be, it's really important that we get a sense of who all of you are. So I have a couple things that we're going to do. Well, backtrack. I'm going to point you to the handouts that we gave you. There's an agenda. It's a loose agenda. We're not going to like adhere to the time frames exactly, but they're going to guide us. We also got started a little early, which is great. But essentially, there's a few things that I really want to accomplish in the course of the next couple hours. I really want to get to know each other better, and we're going to do some introductions in just a second. I want you to understand sort of what we're scoped to do, so you know what to expect from us. And I want to talk through some strategic planning concepts and terminology and make sure everybody's on the same page going forward. Some of you probably have had a lot of experience with strategic planning. Some of you have had less. In a second, I'm going to ask you to place yourself on a spectrum of level of familiarity with it, if you don't mind, no pressure, but it gives us a sense of how much kind of terminology to cover and things like that, just to make sure we're all familiar. We're going to share out sort of what our proposed approach is to working with all of you, which is going to be tweaked and adjusted after today's conversation, because what you share with us today will help us sort of revise and rejigger how we approach things. Yeah, and so that's kind of the main stuff. We have it divided into various sections. And there will be times when you're up and moving around and writing on flip charts and things like that, including in just a second. But again, get up at any point, because I understand how hard it is to sit still for a long time. Any questions so far? Okay, well, let's get started with introductions, and I know we have a few folks also on the call. And so I think what I'll do is I'll start with the folks in the room, and then I'll ask the folks that are on, is it a Teams meeting or a?
We're on Zoom, but
On
one
Zoom.
of our commissioners has asked if you could close this live for a moment to see faces.
Oh,
She hasn't seen you.
Sure, am I?
And that's.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I can hear them.
Is it,
That's
oh, yeah,
how-
is that cool? Yes, they can, yes, they can hear, they can see,
Yes.
okay. Can they see us? If I look at the owl,
You might have to go towards Tanya or towards me.
Towards you.
Come towards me.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay.
Perfect.
Am I looking in the right direction? Okay, hi, everybody on the call. I'm Hillary. Kate, do you want to come over so they can see you as well? Sorry that you've just been hearing our voices and not actually seeing us. I know, it's interesting technology. It has its purpose. Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah, absolutely. With that, if you could pull up now, sorry, people on the call, we're gonna pull up another slide because I have some prompts. And we're gonna go around the room and I'm gonna ask each of you to take maybe 1.5 to 2 minutes, and I'm hoping you can kind of monitor yourselves so that we can get through this. But I really want to hear a few things about you all. You can go. There we go. So, your name and your role with the land bank. How long you've been with the land bank, kind of what initially drew you to it. A couple things you love most about it, and anything else you think we should know about you. I mean, you don't have to answer all of these are just kind of prompts, so you can be like, oh, I'm gonna tell you 2 and 3. Although you have to answer number 1. Sorry, I just changed my tune. So I'll give you a second to kind of peruse that, but we just want to get to know you a little bit. And I don't know who we want to start with.
Can I make a point of, I hope clarification and not offense? There are a number of people on the call that are staff and commissioners
Uh-huh,
who are participating in the strategic planning process
great.
through the duration. This is a public meeting, so there are a few people, members of the public, few members of the public
Okay.
who are welcome to listen in, but are really to be observing this and not active participants in the
Right.
process. So that's all I'm gonna say, I guess. So there's a couple of people, they're welcome to introduce themselves, but they're not gonna be coming back as participants in most of this process.
Right, no, thank you for clarifying that for me. I appreciate that. So I think everybody on the call heard that. So this more formal introduction is
Yeah.
for commissioners and staff.
Yeah.
And if you are on the call as a member of the public, we would love to hear your name. Just let us know that you're on the call. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Lincoln, do you want to start? We can just.
I would love to start, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So Lincoln Borman, I'm the director. I've been with the land bank 18 years, so long time. What drew me to it? Well, I was working in Florida for the Nature Conservancy, and I've been out to the Pacific Northwest a number of times, and I really did not want to continue working in Florida. It's a hard place to work when you're trying to save things. And so when this opportunity came along, I jumped at it. And I also tell people that I couldn't swing New Zealand, so this was the best I could do. What I love most about the land bank is just, it's the people, the nature of the work. There are a lot of things, really. It's an amazing organization and does so many things in the community, really, which are just incredibly important. And it astonishes me, frankly, that we continue to be the only one in the state. That's something that I consider to be extremely important, that we keep the flame going and keep doing what we're doing. I think we've had a lot of success and done a lot of good things. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Lincoln. Appreciate it. Should we go around clockwise? That sound good? Sure. Okay,
And then
Yeah, hi Hillary, hi Amanda,
Kate.
Kate,
It's
sorry.
okay.
Thing is, I mean, I'm on reservation. So I'm one of the newer commissioners, Amy Trainer. Nice to meet you. I moved here 18 years ago from Kansas City as the, so I met Lincoln way back then. It feels like forever ago. I came here to be the Friends of the San Juan's first staff attorney. I'm now a recovering attorney. But I've always, admired the work of the, land bank. I'm also surprised it's the only one in the state. Lucky to have great friends who work here forever and encouraged me to consider throwing my hat in the ring to be a commissioner and help support it, especially as we transition into another year. I currently work for the Swinomish into this process too. And yeah, it's a great organization and it's got this great group of commissioners I get to now work with and get to know. So happy to be here.
Nice to meet you, Amy. Okay, I'm Peggy Bill and I live on Lopez. And I was a land bank commissioner back in the beginning, 1992, I think. And so I served for a term and a half, I think. And I was at that time also living in Seattle, doing different kinds of environmental work, which is my background. And I worked with the conservation organization in Seattle as well for quite a while, now Forterra. I have roots up here. I started coming up here when I was 12. So my family bought land. And so this is my home and this is my passion. And I just love what the land bank does. I think we are so lucky to have the land bank and luck might not carry it. We have to do a little work to make sure that we get to continue. And so I really, really appreciate what the land bank's doing. So I just also got reappointed. So I'm newly back on the land bank and it's a different organization in some ways, or a different work for the commission than it was way back then. There's so much more kind of political kind of elements to it as well now, which is important. And that's probably what we're here for.
Hey, nice to meet you, Peggy. And you're right, like luck may not carry things. So I appreciate your vote of confidence for doing some work.
Yeah.
My name is Chris Campbell. I live on Lopez. I'm current chair of this commission. I don't know how long I've been on the commission, but I've been on the longest for this group, I think. That took some work to get there. And what drew me to it was one of the people on the call, Nancy Green and Tom Cowan, are past commissioners, and they caught me at a weak moment and asked me to join my application, so I did. I was probably the poster child for not knowing much about any conservation efforts in the county. Although I was into education and environmentalism, I ran a summer camp for many, many years, but I really didn't know much about this organization when I came to it, except that they did good things. And I think that what I love most about it, number one, are the people in this room and the staff and the commission. It is one of the most respectful commissions that I've worked on, and I've been fortunate. Most of the ones I've done volunteer work for have been good, but this is a very thoughtful and deliberate group, and different opinions, but we always seem to be able to voice those respectfully and come to consensus. So I think I value that really the most, and staff appear to feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and things, and I think that ability to feel safe in this environment is what I love. I love that because you get good work done when you can do that. And anything else? I'm a Pisces. I'll just throw that out for whoever thinks about those things.
No, thank you, Krista. And it's really like music to my ears to hear that kind of bit of confidence for the respectfulness, I guess, that's shown. And it sounds like you have really productive, good conversations and discussions, which just makes our work a lot easier. Not that there isn't going to be a leaning into difficult topics too, but it sounds like you have a really good basis for having those conversations in a really productive way. So thanks for sharing that. So I'm going to pop to the back there. Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
I'm Shauna Barrows. I'm a field assistant based on San Juan Island and staff. I've been with the land bank for about 2.5 years now, also coincides with how long I've been living here as a full-time resident. What drew me here initially, I used to be a Washington Conservation Corps crew member, and I was on a contract disaster response crew, and my crew was contracted a lot through the land bank when we were not. Degree of respect with not only the work that the land bank did, but also how they treated their projects and how they treated each other and how they treated their crew. And when the opportunity came up to actually work here, it was kind of a no-brainer, and I shifted my life to being out here. I love most, and what continues to impress me most about the land bank is the high degree of significance and uniqueness with the work that is being done. It seems like we are poised at the right time and the right place to make an enormous amount of impact that feels incredibly important. And also the people, like the folks here are awesome. And that's incredibly inspiring to be with a group of people who share those values and want to collaborate and work together to pursue common goals as well. I also really believe in fostering communities of care and ideally deepening a sense of place. I care a lot about the land here, and I care a lot about the community here. And I think the land bank is an organization that is excellent at being able to help foster and reconnect to our lost sense of place and help ideally bring people back into that sense of belonging in that home. So.
Nice to meet you. It's Shauna, did I get that right?
Shauna, yeah.
Shauna, nice to meet you, Shauna. Thank you. Part of that.
Follow. Brian gets to follow.
That is a
Yeah.
hard. I'm Brian Weiss. Hi Hillary and Kate, we've met before online.
Yes, we have.
I'm a commissioner and member of the Strategic Planning Committee. I've been a commissioner for, I guess, 6 or 7 years. I'm retired and, to use Amy's term, a recovering planner. I've been both a city planner and a parks planner. 35 years ago or so, I was a planner on Nantucket, which had, I think, the country's first land bank, on which this one is modeled. And although I didn't work for the Land Bank Commission, I was on the Planning Commission, but worked closely with them and learned a lot about what a land bank was, and we certainly shared a lot of circumstance with the San Juan Islands in terms of tourism and population development and the need to preserve natural land. So I got both an education and a real love for that. Then later on, I worked for a large regional park district, managed about 120,000 acres in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so conservation is really where my heart is. When we arrived in the San Juans about 10 years ago, of course, the first thing we found when we bought our property was we're paying 1% on the REIT. And I was delighted that there was a land bank and that we were helping to support it. It's a great thing. And to me, the land bank is really one of the essential things, especially in a county like San Juan County, where there's a lot of development already and more on its way. Somebody mentioned earlier in the meeting that county government, county councils can change, zoning can change. Really, the only way to guarantee saving land is to own it for conservation purposes. So I feel really strongly about that, and I'm really happy to be part of this commission and share those values with my fellow commissioners and just as Krista said, a very thoughtful group, and happy to be part of that.
Great, thank you for sharing all that, Brian. And what I'm loving also hearing is just all the incredible expertise from the law to planning to everything else, running summer camps, it's, all of that is gonna be so helpful in this process, so thanks for sharing that. Okay.
So before we go
Yeah.
on to the next person, I think everybody's got the prompts down. So
Oh,
can we,
yeah.
can we switch that off? So we,
Definitely, absolutely, yes.
So she can get our lunch.
I'm Todd Flinton, I'm the outreach and volunteer coordinator. Krista, you've been here almost 10 years because we started
Wow.
together.
Oh, that's right.
Krista was a new commissioner and I was new to the land bank. I came from the community theater where I was doing development and was thrilled to find out there was a job. It turns out I applied for the wrong job. I saw a job listing for Off Island for a land trust and outreach, and then actually I knew Doug and asked him about it. Like, I think it's closed. So by mistake, I got this job in a way. But I have visited the Dead Man Bay Preserve. I've been here almost 20 years. I came from California. Followed family up here and helped. I had young children at the first renewal, or the last renewal, not the first renewal, and was a face to the campaign, but have always I have no background in biology, conservation, any of it, but just, I mean, I live in an amazing place and I have no problem talking to people. And the idea of getting on other islands, I was stuck in an office, was amazing and getting paid for it. And I've kind of forgotten to get to the other islands since COVID, so this is a good prompt to go over there. And I'm an Aquarius, maybe that's why we get along. We went to a rally, the first rally together. That's almost 10 years ago, so, yeah, that's it.
Great, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And thank you in advance for getting us online. Okay, all right, now I think we're here.
Marilyn O'Connor, I'm a new commissioner, I've only been for about 6 months. I'm tempted to say whenever I introduce myself, Marilyn O'Connor, Port Perry Harbor, because I was at the Port Perry Harbor for 30 years, the last 10 years as executive director, so I've had lots of opportunity to work on planning, airport planning, waterfront planning, marina, just the whole shebang. So I've lived here since 1979, which before many of you were born. I have seen the islands change and evolve in many different ways. I'm passionate about protection of whatever we can. I think the most important thing we can be doing right now in this place is preserving whatever we can preserve. I followed the land bank since its inception in the early 90s and been a real fan ever since. And what she said about sense of place, I think, is one of the most critical parts of my own philosophy is being rooted deeply into a place, which obviously since I've been here 44 years, I am. It would be hard for me to ever extricate myself from this incredible environment. So I'm just really grateful to have been selected to be able to participate with this really ethical organization. I'm very big on public organizations that respond to and communicate at a very ethical level with the public, and very interested in trying to educate people in our community about the importance of what they're doing.
Great, thank you, Marilyn, that's great. And I love your background with the port. I knew your name from someplace, like now I remember the stated, yeah, with the port, okay.
Even familiar to.
Got it, yeah. Okay, let's move on. Go ahead.
Hello, Hillary and Kate. I'm Jacob Wagner. I'm a field assistant here and I've been here, Sean and I got to start together, so about 2.5 years. And so I work out in the field. Sean and I are outside pretty much every day. Probably do maybe like 4 hours of computer work a month, kind of a thing. Minimal.
Well done.
And I come from Colorado originally, and I went to school for natural resources, but then got sucked into the recreation field. And so I worked, did team building with groups and ropes course stuff, and led backpacking trips, and a lot of work with kids, a lot of work with adults, folks with disabilities. And then here on the island, I worked for an outfitting company for about 10 years and managed that whole thing, and it got to be really stressful. And I was also working with people that just visited the island, and so I kind of lost a connection with the community and considered quitting that job for 5 of those years, and I always thought, well, if a land bank job pops up, then maybe they'll take it, and, yeah, amazingly, this job popped up right at the perfect time, and was fortunate enough to get it. And, yeah, I'm just really excited to get back to, it's just been so nice to get back to the land, such a nice group that we have. And we get to be out on the preserves and interact with the public, so it's rare that people have bad things to say. So we're commonly out there and people just say, thank you so much for doing this work, and we say, you're welcome. I mean, so, yeah, I feel really fortunate to be part of this.
Well, nice to meet you, sir. Is with it Jane?
Jacob.
Jacob, okay, thank you. It's gonna take me a little bit to memorize names, so thank you for your patience. Very nice to meet you. I'm really jealous 4 hours a month on the computer. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Doug McCutcheon, and I'm a steward here on San Juan Island. I have been with the land bank for 19 years, but I've been associated with the land bank for 25 years. I first moved to the San Juans to manage the county park on the west side of San Juan Island. And at that point, there was a contract with county parks to do maintenance for this land bank. What the heck's a land bank? I've never heard of this thing before. I thought it was amazing, and developed a quick friendship with the steward at that time, Tor Hansen. I started volunteering. Volunteering led to contract gigs, and then I just kept showing up till they gave me a job, basically. So, what about else? I kind of echo some of those thoughts about the importance of sense of place, and within that sense of place, for me, that's increasingly a kinship with place and trying to connect people at that level with the world around them here. And for me, that becomes rooted in trying to kind of constantly take in the information to assess when are we? You know, we're really good at addressing who and what and why and all of those sorts of things, but placing yourself in time, everything that's sort of led up to this moment, and trying to use that to project forward in our stewardship is, I think, kind of one of my core sort of values and ideals to be shooting for. So that's everything from geology to historical ecology to agriculture. I was interested in knowing about, you know, what happened with the pea weevil in 1935 out here, as I am about Tethyan pusillanims in the geology and the limestone out at the west side of the island. So yeah, I think that's probably a good summation.
Thank you, Doug. Really nice to meet you. I love your interests. A lot of great like expertise and diversity of thinking and experience. I love that. All right, go ahead.
Hi, I'm the first non-staff, non-commissioned
Oh,
in
okay,
the room.
okay.
My name is Christine Minnie, and I am the District 1 San Juan County Council representative.
Oh, great.
I
Very
have,
nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. I have been in that position for 2.5 years, which now means I've been hanging out with these guys for 2.5 years.
We were harassing you for that.
I guess a little bit. I mean, before being on the council, you wouldn't have found me in this room. You would have found me, you know, on a preserve or out on a trail. And I definitely do not have a conservation background. And in fact, I raised my family on island. I owned a restaurant prior to being a county council member. I've been here now 27 years. I think the two things I love the most in this 2.5 years that I've been working with the folks in this room are the folks in this room. Like Krista said, super functional. I attend a lot of board and commission meetings, a lot. And this is by far the most functional. And I can really appreciate that. And I think that what I also, how did I come to be the liaison? I don't even remember. I think I just raised my hand, you know, when they said land bank, and I think I'm proud of being the word I was thinking of a conduit between council and the land bank, and just a really Darn, that word escaped me, just in a good way.
Yeah.
So, I love biscuits and gravy, like, more than, wow, you know, my kids.
You won't share that.
Sure don't need to know.
And I also am
Couple Pisces in the room. Well, thank you. Very nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. I think we have one last person in the room and then we'll pivot to the folks on the call.
I'm Aaron Rock. My position with the land bank is financial clerk. I guess what I really do is tie together, you know, what the stewardship staff does and what the land bank does and how it and blend it into the county mold. So for the public to kind of understand that from a financial contracting side. I'm 36 years old and I'd say this is my first real job that I've ever had, 2.5 years. I came up from professional sports straight into culinary where I became an executive chef. Worked for big hotel, Hilton, Waldorf Astoria. Then came up here to Pacific Northwest, took over the Friday Harbor House. So I was in kitchens and restaurants. And then as you know, got married, had kids, bought a house. Really shifted how much time I wanted to be in a kitchen and kind of focused more on the operations side of restaurants where I really grew more of a passion for the business side and the finance side and how to make it actually work. So everything that I've really gained over time has really been pretty raw and just through experience and, you know, owning a restaurant, you know, no tighter finances than running a restaurant and making that work. So got really particular with that. After living here for a while, I wanted to start my own business in the restaurant. So I wanted to do that through a nonprofit, pay what you can to help fight food insecurity here in Humboldt County. And a lot of that was, and that kind of got me shifted into conservation and, you know, how do we make it work here? How do we make living here for everyone easier? And then that abruptly stopped right as COVID started. Kind of put that in the ground, that opportunity. I was fortunate enough to see a very similar job to what my capabilities were come available from someone who had been here for 15 years. I was just lucky enough to get that job and, you know, big shoes to fill. The woman that I replaced. And I have to say, you know, my entire career of working and being with teams in many different stressful environments and all that, but I have to say, like, I've never been around a group of people who are so passionate and work so well together, so low stress work environment with this group. It's incredible. You wouldn't even think something existed where, you know, between a commission and staff, everyone is so respectable, trustworthy, you know, and great to work with. So just happy to be a part of it as long as I can be. And, you know, renewal, you know, we can't just hope for luck to keep this thing going. We have to make it happen. It's, you know, a great thing to have here. So glad to be a part of it.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that. So I think we've got everybody covered in the room, right? And thank you for hanging in there through introductions. We're going to pivot to folks on the call. But I really do like to take the time to do this because it's really important for us to get a better sense of all of you. And also, I'm guessing you're learning a few things about each other that you didn't know, or you're being reminded of things. At least I'm hoping. Okay, so let's start with the commission members on the call. Why don't you all introduce yourselves first? And I'll just let you kind of pick who's going to go, because I don't know all the commissioners yet.
Go ahead.
Sandy, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
Okay, yes, so I'm Sandy Friel. I'm a commissioner on Orcas Island. I have been for about 5.5 years. My day job is I'm a realtor. By night, I put on my cape and try to save my little part of the world. What attracted me to join the land bank is I came from Florida, like Lincoln, and have just seen development override natural areas. When I moved to the San Juans, when I first came here, the land bank, the preserved lands was one of the things that attracted me. To, I think it's so important to feel in this, that to live in a place and to be able to drive down the road and not see mini malls popping up, and to know, okay, that's going to look like that for the next however long I'm here, which will be until I leave in a box. So I joined the land bank to learn more about the inner workings and do what I could do now and in the future to help it become renewed and in the renewal vote, because I think that's the biggest thing, the best thing we can do for local land conservation. So that's my story.
Great, thank you, Sandy. Really nice to meet you virtually here. What other commissioners do we have on the call here?
I don't see the other one, Mike.
Mike is.
Mike, are you there? We're not seeing you? Don't think so.
He was gonna have to leave this meeting, but Aaron, you might check and make sure he's not gonna get bumped out into a waiting room. right now.
I think it would say it.
Yeah.
I'll check.
Yeah, and as you're doing that, why don't we invite the staff that are on the call to introduce themselves?
I guess I'll go.
Go ahead, Peter.
Hi, yeah, I'm Peter Gioze. I'm the preserve steward on Orcas. And I've been with the land bank for nearly 5 years, which is kind of mind blowing. I think the land bank came on my radar through the new buyer packet in 2016. My wife and I bought a little lot on Orcas near the ferry terminal then, and I got that packet and I just was like, wow, that's kind of a cool little organization. Never occurred to me that Orcas might figure into my career. I was happily placed as a regional ecologist and a nice team in Portland at Oregon Metro, and wasn't job hunting, but a friend of mine sent me the Orcas Preserve Steward announcement, and I thought about it, and we talked it over and decided to apply, and no regrets about that. It's I really love this environment, and very happy to be here. I think the slower pace of the work and Turtleback Mountain Preserve kind of really sold me on things. And I've spent my career planning and implementing restoration projects mostly, but I'm also interested in the planning and policies and procedures side of things. So I kind of like that part about the land bank. I get to wear a few different hats and weigh in on processes like the strategic planning process. I'm on the small group that's helping with that. So that's me.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Very nice to meet you.
You too. Thanks.
Okay, other staff on the call.
Charlie is on.
Charlie, you want to go next?
Yep, unmuting, and hopefully I'm not breaking up too much. I'm out on the south end in the fog, pulling tansy weeds. My name's Charlie. I'm the car coming by, agriculture coordinator and steward, and live on San Juan, but work countywide. Let's see. I have a lifelong connection to the island, specifically the south end of Lopez, for a long time. Lived there. Moved to Lopez in 2010, worked for various conservation and agriculture projects. And through that work, I started working with the land bank and being aware of the land bank more and more. Tim Clark, former Lopez steward and agriculture point person, was a big inspiration, as well as all the other stewards I'd meet along the way. So it was on my radar, and about 2015, I moved to San Juan with my wife, who grew up here, and we found land, and I think I got married and bought land and found the land bank job the same year, 2016. So I've been here 7 years, easy to keep track of. started as a field assistant, and that's my true love, working outside in the field. And 3 years later, I stepped into the role of egg coordinator when Tim Clark retired, and that's been a very engaging and I have a lot of passion for working farmlands and the farming community. I talked to Tim Clark previously about leasing land before I worked for the land bank, and got to know some of the program through that, and opportunities and challenges, which certainly ripe with both. I think the diversity of the landscape and the mandate, really just so many opportunities and challenges within that, and that's endlessly engaging and inspiring so many different stakeholders and people to engage with, and just learning constantly. So it's, the days just fly by, and endless work, but feel passionately about it, and inspired and exhausted sometimes. But I think this process is really critical right now, and hopefully we can reach out to the broad community, including the agricultural community. That's me. Pass it on to maybe Amanda.
Nice to meet you, Charlie. Thanks for sharing. It sounds like we're Amanda next. Amanda?
Amanda's not on, but Erin could introduce herself.
That's
Erin Wygan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Erin, a staff member.
She's the county staff. She's not directly with the land bank, but she's working with our outreach and.
Okay, great. Erin, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for letting me join today's meeting. As it was said, I work for Cameron County as a communications coordinator. I've been here for just over a year, but I've been in Long Island permanently for the last 5 years. I've lived here all my life. It's a lonely icon camp up here on Orcas Island, and I'm up here in the summer, so I feel very connected to the island. I'm so very lucky to be able to try my best to communicate all of the great things that Cameron County is working on, many of which can be found at the land bank. So that's one of the tasks that I've been assigned to help the community have a better, more well-rounded understanding of all the things that the county is involved in. So I'm grateful to be working on behalf of the land bank and working very closely with Tanya to manage the work of the land bank.
Thank you, Erin. We don't have the greatest connection, but I think we found most of what you shared. But thank you. It's very nice to meet you. And it looks like we do have Amanda now. So Amanda, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? I don't know if Amanda can hear me. Maybe
You're muted.
Oh, there she is. Okay, now we see you and hear you. Well, actually, we
I can
don't
hear you. I can hear you now. I had to hook up my little speaker. Hi, you can hear me?
Yes.
You can't hear me? Yeah, sorry, I'm getting ready to head out for the day, so I had stepped away. So you're still doing intros?
Yeah, just a brief intro, who you are, your role.
Okay. I'm Amanda Guido. I am the Lopez Island Preserve Steward. And I've been on staff for 5 years. And before that, I volunteered on the commission for about 3 years. And I had heard about the land bank before I even moved up here, and just thought it was such a unique organization. And then when I was living on the island, like, just was enthused to be able to participate. Initially, I had been working with the Youth Conservation Corps, so we did a lot of work on land bank properties, and that really got me introduced to a lot of the land. I love the work. I think it's really interesting, and that I get to just take care of these really special places on Lopez and connect with the community. I think I heard somebody say that before, is just like meeting people on the land who are just like, wow, you get to do this, and how enthusiastic they are, whether we're working on trails or pulling weeds or any of the number of different things that we're doing. And then something else that I think is important, if you look at all the work that the land bank has done over the last 30 years, it's just really clear that San Juan County would be a really different place without it. And just what we've been able to do makes it that much more special now.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Very nice to meet you. Do we have any other staff?
I think we've got Mike Pickett on
Mike?
the phone. He's another commissioner.
Mike, are you there?
I know he's traveling today, so it might be hard to.
Yeah, maybe
Well,
not.
we'll just keep it in field if Mike joins us at some point. We
That
can
is his cell.
pause and have him introduce himself. Any other staff that you all see on the call? Do we want to have members of the public briefly say who they are and what island they're from?
Sure.
Yeah, so members of the public that are on the call, if you want to, we'd love to hear your name and maybe what island you're calling in from. So it looks like Kathleen, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kathy Morris and I am on Orcas Island and I'm a farmer. And I'm a supporter and critic of the land bank.
Nice to meet you, Kathy. Thanks for being here. Anyone else?
Tim.
Tim? I think you're on mute, Tim, if you're trying to speak, we can't hear you.
Oh, yes, I am so technically adept. I'm Tim Clark, I'm on Lopez, and I'm a longtime volunteer and previous staff member, but that was a long time ago.
Great, well, thanks for being here. Nice to meet you. Anyone else? Seems like we got everyone. All right. Well done, everybody. Thank you for hanging out in there. So, we are gonna spend a few minutes. I'm gonna pivot over to Lincoln. He's gonna provide a little context for the drivers behind the strategic plan. You probably are familiar with some of them, but I just want to make sure that everybody kind of is on the same page with why the land bank is pursuing a strategic plan right now. As Lincoln is sharing that out, others might want to chime in as well with a little more context. Feel free to do that. We'll keep this fairly brief. While this is happening, I invite those in the room to take the opportunity to stand up and walk over to that little piece of paper on the wall. I'm trying to establish kind of like your level of comfort with strategic planning, like how experienced are you with it? Have you never done it before? Have you done 8 of them? And it's just kind of a spectrum. The more comfortable you are with it is the right-hand side. I'd love it if you put your name where on the spectrum you feel your level of comfort or familiarity with strategic planning is. For the folks on the call, if you put it in the chat, we'll post it up there for you. Okay, so I guess on the call, I would say in the chat, put high level of comfort, medium level of comfort, and low level of comfort, if that makes sense, with strategic planning. So you're gonna kind of be doing that while Lincoln's talking. So sorry, Lincoln, I hope you don't mind a little activity happening. I'm trying to keep it a little quiet. So again, name on the chart of kind of where you feel like you follow the spectrum. So Lincoln, take it away.
Great, and obviously commission members should chime in. This is actually they're driving this process, not me. But I think the basic context for this is the fact that the land bank has been around for a long time now, and that the community's changed a lot. What we do has changed a lot. And people's perception of what we do or should do is all over the map, really. We've never done a strategic planning exercise before. We do have a mandate, which we have to operate within, but staying within that framework, there are a lot of choices to be made. And we have really done things very differently from when the organization first started. And now really moving from the beginning where We were doing a lot of conservation easements on agricultural lands, as the islands have changed so much over time and we've seen so much development happen. There's been a strong demand for us to really start saving special places and accommodating people's desire to have them preserved and to have a place to go. We're now at another kind of pivotal moment in the history of the organization. We have been through 2 reauthorizations, and we're coming up on a 3rd one. And I think in advance of that, there's been a big question posed by the commission about, where are we doing a good job? Where are we headed? Where should we be headed? And really wanting to get a better handle on that and define it a lot more. And so the strategic planning process really is the way to do that. So we started talking about this really in earnest last December. And now we've arrived at the beginning of the actual planning process. And with that, I'd invite commissioners to chime in. Or not.
Well, for me, I think you covered it. I think it is kind of amazing that in all the years that this organization has existed, this process has never been done before. I think so what a great opportunity that we get to do that. Yeah, that's all I would say. I think we're poised in a good place, especially just before renewal, to take a look at what we've been doing and where we really think we want to go and see how our community feels about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been involved in some strategic action planning, but I really look forward to a plan, and I think we all know this, that plans get done and then they get put on the shelf. So I'm really looking forward to a plan that really is alive and functional.
Right. I agree, that's where we have to go back.
Yeah.
Live and functional plan, I'm with you. Brian, go ahead.
I have to say that I originally came at this from a little different viewpoint. I was ambivalent at best about doing a strategic plan. I thought the land bank was doing great, and we should keep on doing more of the same. Couple of things changed my mind. We've had a couple of really major issues, policy and directional issues over the last couple of years that I think that we really need to sit and grapple with. Coupled with that, we have 3 new commissioners. We've lost 3 commissioners with a long time institutional memory, which is important. So we're really just meeting each other now, as you mentioned before, Hillary. So it's a good chance I think, to bring the new commissioners aboard and up to speed, and also get a fresh perspective on some of those issues.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing that, Brian. I appreciate that. And the 2 topics that you referred to but didn't say what they are, we'll want to circle back and hear what those are. I think I can guess, but I'd love to hear your words.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
I've been through a lot of planning exercises that have ended up on my shelf in the closet and have not, ended up doing really what I hoped they would do. So I'm also interested in what Peg has identified, as the type of product, but I'm also really interested in the fact that the process is one which, opens up, in an organization, more understanding of each of the individuals participating and of their understanding. So that, to me, the process is just as important as whatever the finished product is.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. I totally agree with you. I think the process is crucial. It'll be a very energizing process. There will be times when it's hard, but some difficult conversations will happen, and you will emerge from it even more united and functional than it sounds like you already are, which I was really happy to hear that you are, but often organizations are not starting these processes, and so they have farther to go. But yeah, so thanks for sharing that. I am going to see if anybody on the Zoom call wants to chime in, any of the commissioners or the staff on the Zoom call want to chime in well, I guess commissioners, sorry, on just kind of the context and background, if you want to share any more. Yeah, Sandy, go. Yeah, go ahead.
First strategic plan for me. So this is a brand new process, but I was I planned. I'm a planner, but I haven't been involved in a larger organization to do a strategic plan. And I'm very interested in the public input component once there's a draft plan. There's been so many new people moving here. The landscape is changing. Climate change is bearing down on us. And I think it's just a perfect time. And I also want to hear from the community because we are the people's land bank.
Great. Thank you, Sandy. And the public engagement aspect of this is something that we will talk a little bit more about when we talk about the process that we've laid out. So with that, is there anything else on the context and drivers for it that anybody wants to share? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
It's done, right?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, and I think what I just want to kind of point out, and just falls back again on that whole question of when are you? You look at like the land trust movement and when it's sort of established and kind of really getting a lot of steam in the 80s and 90s. And we're kind of a little bit behind, kind of in that same period. A lot of these organizations are hitting the same sort of place right now and asking these questions of like, how do you grow? Because you start as an idea and then you be like, kind of create this agency. And it started from having no staff to having a director and hoping that volunteers would do all of this work too. Now we have how many staff? 12?
Yeah.
So 12 full-time staff too. That's a big change. And so I think that time to reflect and look back at like, how did we get where we are and where we headed? It's a very opportune sort of time for us to be, taking a good look at all of that. And I hope through this process too, we'll be looking at our successes. So it's pretty phenomenal what, the land bank has been able to do and have this, very positive role within the community for so many years. And we are in a pivotal spot. So I'm looking forward to it from that context.
Yeah, no, thank you, Doug. And you mentioned something that is a good opportunity just for me to share my own thoughts, which is in strategic planning process, lots of you have lots of experience. It's really nice to see that. And so those of you who have a lot of experience already know this, but those who are maybe newer, maybe don't, it's not only a chance to kind of look internally and do what we call like a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats analysis, where you really like get honest with yourself about where are we succeeding, what are our strengths, and where are we maybe having some learning edges, as we say in our industry, polite speak for what are our challenges, where do we need to make improvements. This process will allow space for conversations on both of those things, and both of them are equally important to kind of map your path forward. The other thing I wanted to just kind of add on to what you just shared, just because I've been working with a lot of different organizations, public sector agencies, private sector, not-for-profit entities. This is the first land bank public entity, but somewhat different. I've worked with different types of entities and they're all unique. But what I am seeing is this huge interest in strategic planning because of a lot of the challenges that some people have mentioned. The most obvious of which, of course, is the impacts of climate change on conservation efforts. But there's also lots of other sort of big shifts happening in society. Not only did the pandemic kind of shake, economic systems pretty significantly, but there's a huge equity, inclusion, movement that is good, that's happening, but it's also shaking things up and forcing conversations, which are good. So it's just interesting, you're not alone in not having done this before. And you're not alone in leaning into it now, so I really commend you for doing it. I think with that, lunch is getting set up. I would like to, is lunch, are you ready for people to kind of? Yeah, it's attack the table? Yeah. Perfect. I think what I'd like to propose is that we take a little break for lunch. Kate and I are gonna put some posties on the wall. One poster is gonna say didn't like, and the other one's gonna say like. And what we're trying to generate from you is for those of you who've been involved in strategic plan, so if you haven't, Sandy, you're off the hook. We want to hear what you liked about the processes that you were involved with, and maybe what you didn't like about them, to help us as we make final refinements in our own approach. So those will be up on the wall. Please grab lunch. You can do that work while you're eating or after lunch or whenever you want. But what do you say we take about a 20-minute lunch break and then come back? Because if we come back, we can maybe get out a little early. That work for everyone? Yeah. Okay, so we'll come back. 11:53. Yeah, quarter hour. Great. So for the folks on the call, we're just getting settled back in. Thanks for hanging in there while we do a little lunch break here in the room. Thanks for coming back as well with Kane, appreciate it. Feel free to keep eating your lunch, cookies, etc. while we continue down the path. We're gonna do a super quick exercise. I just want to generate some ideas from those of you who've been involved in strategic planning before. Some of the things that you liked about the processes that you've been involved in. And just raise your hand. I'll pivot to folks on the phone too. As needed, so, or just feel free to take yourself off of mute and chime in, because I may not see you. You can raise a virtual hand too, if you know how to do that. So to those of you who've been involved, what are some of the things that you've liked about some of the strategic planning processes you've been involved with, if anything? Amy.
There's a lot of like great collaborative brainstorming, sort of like your fellow participants are catalysts, and I think there's a good synergy of ideas and creativity that comes out of it.
Great, collaboration, creativity, synergy of ideas, I love that. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Peggy.
I think it really asks people to really articulate what's important.
Yeah, so can we say like clarity on what's important? Yeah. Great, I love that. Anything else?
I guess when I've done it before, it just made me feel more invested in everything. And it was nice to see everyone else get to that level too.
Great, so, and by invested in everything, like invested in the work of the organization,
Yeah.
is that what you mean? Okay, more invested in the work of the organization. Great, Marilyn.
I was also going to say, if it takes place in a public arena, then it gives, one of the things I like is it gives the public an insight into the goals and steps that that organization is attempting to make. I'm just really big on how the public gets to perceive their own institution.
Right.
So strategic planning is, I mean, this is obviously going to be done in a public process.
Right.
A lot of people aren't sitting around the room with us. But it seems like an obligation to do the hard work out in front of all of your constituents.
Yeah, that's great. I think I might phrase that as maybe there's some transparency. It creates transparency with the public. But I think I also heard you say, Marilyn, that, and it may be imposing. So.
No, please impose.
Okay. I think I heard you say something about it. It also can help from a communication standpoint.
Correct.
When you get clarity on your purpose and your path, that it's easier to articulate that to the public. Okay. Great. Anything else?
Yeah, I liked it, a couple times where priorities change, what going in with a certain perception on what priorities would probably be, and coming out learning that some of them were different, learning new, setting new priorities, or maybe unexpected. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, I didn't actually end up where we thought we might. And
Right.
We were really sure where we were going.
Let's do it.
And it was a good thing.
Yeah. How would we, I like that too, sort of, it allowed for, new pathways.
Like
open
identify
up.
new pathways.
Yeah.
or-
Identify
New
new
priorities.
priorities.
Yeah, something like that, because
Yeah.
it came along with the brainstorming. I can't be really specific, but where a newer priority actually encompassed what we thought was the original direction, but it was, we end up taking a broader perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
So it just was different. We ended up in a different place and it was.
Yeah. I would also say like broadens perspective, broader perspectives, didn't end up where you thought you were going, or maybe kind of, which is all good. I mean, I think to me that speaks to the generative nature of it. And that if we knew where we were gonna be at the end of this process, we wouldn't need to do the process, right?
Very well. No offense to you guys. but-
No, I mean, we create a process where you can get to a place you wanna be. We don't know where that place is because we haven't done the process yet, so it has to, it's all tied together. So thank you for that. Are there any, let me give it to the folks on
Oh, I
the
think
call.
Brian has
Oh,
a,
yeah, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of what Krista's saying, but different people with different roles and therefore different perspectives.
Mhm,
And the way that applies to us, I think, is, commission and staff,
right,
real different perspectives and the opportunity to communicate those things.
yeah, the opportunity to share differing perspectives. Yeah, I like that too. Is there anyone on the Zoom call that would like to share out things that you've liked about strategic planning processes you've been involved with? I'm not seeing anyone go off mute. You're welcome to just go off mute. I realize you're like seeing my side profile as I'm looking at. So I should look at the owl, but I see you all over there. Okay, well, folks on the call, really feel free to just come off of mute and chime in so that we don't miss you, because I know how awkward it can sometimes be when there's a group of people in a room talking, but you're on the digital side of things, so just really feel free to chime in. We do want to hear from you. Is there anything else on this category before we go over to the other one? Anything else about what you liked? Okay, let's go over to the blue zone. Leaving the pink zone and going to the blue zone. What didn't you like? Be as honest as you need to be, because I've been in some bad processes myself.
I would say the most frustrating time I had working on a strategic plan is when we worked through and had very good and productive discussions, and it actually involved the consultants that we worked with, and we gave direction. And they took the product and brought it back to us distilled, and all of a sudden we're reworking it, and then we rework it again, and it's like. We ended up referring to the notes from the previous meetings, because I was like, we were here 2 meetings ago. And now we're back here again, so it's that looping back and not staying clear.
Right.
You can only work something so long, and then you just have to move forward. I guess that was. So whatever was going on in the process, I don't think it was the people that were supporting us, the facilitators, because it was frustrating, They produced what we asked for, and then we took it apart again, and we produced it again, so that was very frustrating.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm trying to think of how I would phrase that, maybe.
Department of Redundancy Department.
Maybe, yeah, like, I would almost say like poor process.
Yeah.
Could
Like
you
that,
say, sorry,
no, go ahead.
lack of memorialization?
Yeah, lack of tracking, lack of memorialization,
Or lack of commitment.
lack of commitment, like,
Well, agreed.
like revisiting decisions maybe, or upending previous decisions.
And maybe it was just language. I mean, there were a couple of English
Yeah.
people on there that we just kept working terminology or
Right.
how. Whatever the bullet point was, how it struck them at one point, and then it was rewording it.
Right.
And then, at some point you just have to.
Yeah.
move
Yeah, maybe
past
too much wordsmithing with the
that.
final
That's-
product.
I think that's what.
Yeah, I think there's a few words up there, Kate,
Okay,
like
but I'm
over
hearing
wordsmithing to death. not-
sticking to the process.
Yeah, stick to
Staying
process,
on track.
yeah.
Not
Staying on
getting
track.
too iterative.
I also agree about the wordsmithing piece at the end. And when we talk about this process, we're doing this so that we can make sure we can have this productive and efficient of a process as we can, knowing that there will be moments. Every one of you will have a moment of frustration. I'm sure it's almost impossible not to. So I thank you in advance for your patience when that moment of frustration arises. But we are gonna try to reduce that I'd love to reduce it to 0. But I'm also realistic. But that's one of the reasons we're doing this. So this helps us think about this process too. What else?
I have one that straddles both.
Yeah,
things.
that's great.
That it, forces you to pump the brakes and kind of do this sort of inward looking and analysis. That's both good, but then it's also kind of like when you're operating in like a busy mode and you've got all these other things going on that
Right.
that's also like taking that time and things is also can feel precious.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It does kind of land on both. I'd say like pumping, pausing ongoing work maybe is on the negative side, and then pumping the brakes and being reflective is on the positive side. Does that sound about right? Yeah. And I do think, I'm just gonna kind of articulate a few thoughts as you all are sharing this, so you can sort of hear my own philosophy and thinking is, I think one of the most important things about strategic planning is the pumping the brakes. I know how difficult it is to do that as we are all careening through our work, our parenting, our partnerships, our home life, our volunteer, our gigs. Things are just like constantly coming at us, and it is hard to pump the brakes. But when you do, and you do it like in a really supportive way, which this is gonna be, it can just provide some very magical moments of clarity and, sense of purpose and direction, and also an opportunity to just be like, hey, we have come a long way. We as people tend not to celebrate accomplishments and see accomplishments to the degree that we need to in order to keep things going. And I think this pumping the brakes allows that opportunity. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Anyone on the call? I'm turning back to the folks over here, over there, here.
So I've definitely had some bad experiences.
Yeah.
One where the facilitators were like really obtuse and sort of seemed to kind of have their own, like thinking about, this is when I was in a land trust in Colorado, and the product, we sort of like ended up after 2 days with like not really anything to show, because she sort of kept us at this high level and we didn't like kind of dig in. And so it was just like really obtuse, like, well, wait a minute. We kept thinking, okay, well, aren't we gonna get there? Aren't we gonna like get into it? And we never sort of got into it. Excuse me. So that was sort of one thing I didn't like, was also not having a facilitator. There could be too much wordsmithing, but I think we also count on you, and it sounds like you're already really good at it, sort of distilling down sort of what you're hearing and helping reflect that to move it forward. And so I think if you don't have that, that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. I think, Kate, do you feel like you know how to capture that one? I'm hoping so, because I'm struggling.
Amy, it sounds like you're saying one of the frustrating points was maybe a facilitator being too involved in the direction, or maybe like the outcome that they perceived.
I think that was one thing. The other thing was, them sort of not letting the group sort of get down into the kind of weeds of the task at hand.
Yeah, this is great. So good for me to hear this. I really appreciate hearing this. This is really good. Anything else anyone can think of?
Yeah, I've definitely had the experience where individuals hijack the process. Yeah. And just, they've got a perspective that they have to keep going after, even though things may have moved in a different direction, it's always gonna come back to that.
Right. Right. So, and in my mind, that's kind of facilitator problem letting any one or
Yeah.
small number of people
Yeah.
dominate.
Yeah.
And that's part of our job and mine in particular, to make sure that there's space for all voices, that there's no dominance. It doesn't sound like this group has much of a challenge with that. I mean, I'm just getting to know you all, but part of my job is going to be to ensure that you all can bring to the table what you want to, and that there's space for your thoughts, and that they're reflected in the end product. So, and I'll ask you to hold me and Kate accountable to that. If, you know, we have, we're not perfect, like, we have our facilitative moments too, where things are challenging. But hold us accountable, be like, hey, you didn't hear this, I'm trying to say this, or you can pull me aside privately and chat with me. I totally welcome it. We were just chatting on the ferry on the way here, with Kate as kind of a rising facilitator, and I'm sort of helping bring her up. I said, I learn from every experience I have. Like, there will never be a place where facilitator, because it's just every situation, there's personalities and processes, so, yeah. Anyway, that said, any final thoughts on what you didn't like before we move on? Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, I'm going back to Krista's statement about reiteration. And I think one of the problems that sometimes leads to that is difficulty acknowledging consensus once you have it. And that's kind of counterbalanced by, you know, what do you do with the minority report if you can't get to consensus?
Right. Yeah, so challenges getting to consensus, yeah.
And acknowledging it so you don't have
Yeah.
to go back if
Right.
you have it.
Right, no, that's good, that's a good reminder too, because we will talk about the decision-making process, this decision-making component of this. And ideally, this is gonna be consensus, that everybody who's involved in this is good with everything in there. And that doesn't mean like every single thing in there, you're like, yes, but you can live with it. So, thank you for that, Brent, that's great. Is there anything else on the negative side of the ledger?
I don't know, I'm not a negative, but when people don't participate, it doesn't really support the process. So
Right.
So it can be a thing that I wouldn't like, you know.
Yeah.
If you feel safe, this is our chance to everyone say what they're really thinking and sharing based on their experience and knowledge, and so that I like it when people do that, and I don't like it when they don't do it.
That's great, so.
We could throw up active participation maybe over here.
Yeah. I like that, active participation, and it's incumbent on Kate and I to create the space where active participation occurs. And we recognize that not everybody participates in the same way. Some people are more comfortable in writing or small groups and less comfortable in a big room. And so we will work with all sort of perspectives and preferences for how to share, but we also ask that people understand that like participating and engaging is really important in this process, especially if there's something that's bothering you. Either about the process or about something we're talking about that might go in the strategic plan. That's, if you're like, yeah, it makes me like that, that's especially important to speak up. So hopefully that won't happen too often, but this process tends to shed some light on some challenges, and that's one of the benefits of it, shed some light on where there's challenges and create the conversation that needs to happen to help move past it and figure out your way out of it. Okay, well, I think we've landed at a good place. Thank you for participating in that. That really helps us understand kind of what's worked, what hasn't in the past. And we're gonna be refining our approach after this, and this is gonna inform that as well. But with that, I do wanna kind of move on into this section, which is what I'm calling the basic components of the strategic plan. And for those of you like Amy, whose name is way off on the right, this is probably gonna be somewhat, you know, not necessarily useful for you to just hang in there, but maybe it'll be a good refresher, I don't know, but this, it's really important that we all understand the kind of concepts and terminology around strategic planning, because this is where, like, as a facilitator, I get a little frustrated if people haven't like done the work ahead of time to know what's coming. So this is me sharing with you what's coming. It's also in your handout. So if you turn your handout, does anybody need a handout? And I apologize to the folks on the call if you don't have this. We'll get it to you afterwards. There's a 3-page document called Strategic Planning Concepts. Do you need one too, Sean? It's on, right? Yes. Okay. Okay. We need to give. I can have more than one. Oh, actually, no, it's 2 minutes because I have the agendas. How many hands are up to? 3. Okay. All right. That's a trouble. There you go. Okay. There we go. So, and we're gonna need a presentation on this.
It's your 4 minutes at the computer a month.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna start with this. It's a little bit repetitive with this, but like, what kind of words come to your mind when you think of strategic plan? Just off the top. Raise your hands.
The values.
Values,
Action.
action, I like it, positive.
Goals.
Goals, nice.
Mission.
Mission, like it.
Changes.
Changes, okay, good.
Priorities.
Priorities, nice, I like it. And folks on the call too can put things in the chat. And Erin, are you on, you might, Tanya's, okay, never mind, don't put things in the chat right now because we're not looking at it. Just chime in verbally, thank you. Okay, anything else? All right, well, I've asked this question a lot of times, and you're the most positive group that I've heard. Usually I hear boring, tedious, blah, 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 but it can be that, it can be that. But, and aspects of it can be that. Our process, we're hoping, is more engaging and dynamic, and will get you where you want to go. Strengthen relationships, help you get more clarity on priorities. Okay, I'm gonna share a couple little cartoons, because who doesn't like to make fun of themselves? So the first cartoon, doing a strategic plan, so it's a simple 2-part strategy. First, locate the hills and then head for them. I love strategic planning jokes. Okay. The next one. Oh, this is a little funny. This plan will be much easier not to implement than the last plan we didn't implement. I also, which I think speaks to, I can't remember, it was Krista, or no, yeah, that's right. You shared that talking about wanting to have something actionable that isn't going to collect dust on the shelf. Okay, so the next slide is, and this, I don't know if we can do something with this. Oh, sorry, I keep looking at you. You're not the one controlling that. There we go. Okay, well, we'll do our best here. These are just some kind of definitions and descriptions of strategic planning that's kind of in the strategic planning literature. Yes, there are people who write PhD theses on this. And I just wanted to kind of share some of it, just so we're kind of steeped in the language. A deliberative, disciplined approach to producing decisions and actions. It requires effective deliberation, again, that word deliberation, and leadership. Right, a concept, activities, procedures, and techniques can contribute to its success. And then they kind of talk about the benefits of it: promotion of strategic thinking, improved decision-making, enhanced organizational effectiveness. This is a really important thing that often comes out of strategic planning. Responsiveness, resilience, produces fundamental decisions and actions that shape and guide what an organization is, what it does, and why it does it. And then it's intended to enhance the ability to think, act, and learn strategically. So that's just like a whole lot of kind of coming out of the wash of the strategic planning literature. I personally have never found like a really clear definition of strategic planning that I like, so I made up my own, which is the next slide. This is how I roll. So I'm going to read it out loud. A process that engages staff and leadership in collaborative discussions that result in collective agreement on what an entity's North Star is and the best path for getting there. And
We're gonna talk more about this North Star concept in a second, but I put the little star here to start planting the seed. A North Star for an organization is, if your work is successful, what would the world look like? And we're gonna be going there, we're gonna have really rich conversations to help you identify a North Star for the land bank. I would tweak this actually based on what I've already heard from you, and I was actually thinking on the ferry. I would also say, and your key partners, and in your case, the public, it needs to engage them as well, so I'd probably tweak my definition and add them in there as well. But that, just so you know, this is kind of how I think about strategic planning, and I'm gonna pause there and see if there's any questions or comments or even pushback on this, or if this makes sense. Make sense? Okay. So we did this already. We're going to skip to the next slide. What I'm going to do, if you go back one, sorry, we're going to talk about the basic components of a strategic plan. We're not going in the weeds on these right now. What I'm trying to do is just make sure that you're all kind of familiar with the concepts and terminology and what they basically mean, so you can start thinking about them. At the retreat that we're gonna have in the fall, that's where we're gonna really go into the weeds on these things, but this is really just sort of planting some seeds. So you start thinking about these things and understanding the concepts that we'll be talking about. So now, next slide, thank you, Kate. Okay, starting with, I'm kind of going in the order that we're gonna discuss and agree to them on at the retreat. The first is the concept of a vision statement, which I also call the North Star. And I've already shared this. It's basically answering the question, if your work is successful, what would the world look like? Vision statements are inspirational. They're really short, often 2 to 3 to 4 words. I'm going to share a couple examples in a second. They're very targeted and usually active voice. They're inspiring. This is the thing that if you were talking to a member of the public, like or one of the stewards, or we were chatting with people on one of the steward lands, that it just comes out because everybody knows this vision statement and it inspires people, and that it's long-term. It's not going to probably be accomplished in your lifespan or the lifespan of anybody working for the entity or the leadership team. It's generational. It's way out in the future. So let me share with you some examples. I just have a couple. This first entity is one that I've worked really closely with 15 years and led their strategic planning process. So I can speak really closely to that. This is just Oxfam. Everybody kind of knows Oxfam. I really like their vision statement, and it's a good example. So the Oil Spill Task Force, which is a group, all of the West Coast US states, plus the province of British Columbia, collaborating to prevent, respond to, prepare for oil spills. That's a group that I helped to coordinate, and their vision statement is no spilled oil. It took them 2 days to come up with that at a retreat in Long Beach. They did a lot of other things too, but that's what they came up with, no spilled oil. It's like clear. It's not going to happen in our lifetimes, obviously. We wish it would, but that's what they want to see in the world, is no spilled oil. So really, really clear, 3 words, very clear. Oxfam, kind of the same idea, just world without poverty. Probably not going to happen in the lifespan of anybody working for Oxfam right now. I'd love it if it were, but that's what they want the world to be like after they're done. Does that make sense? Vision statements, North Star. I feel so strongly about the importance of coming up with a vision statement or a North Star, because no matter what happens, no matter what opportunities come up, no matter what challenges present themselves, oh, should we buy this land, or something giving us anything that comes up that's kind of like, what do we do about this? If you take a step back and say, okay, our vision is X, is that going to help us get there? Yes, okay, let's talk about it more. No, then it's clear. It makes it more clear internally, and it makes it more clear externally as well. So anyway, I am gonna
It's your choice if you want to create a vision statement. All of this is your choice, but I'm gonna really advocate for you to take the time to do it, because I think it'll be really important. So that's the vision / North Star statement. A mission statement, this is another strategic plan terminology that's different from your vision statement. It's a little more detailed than your vision statement. It's more around what is done every day to work towards that vision statement. So it's still concise, but it's longer than 3 to 5 words. It explains your reason for existing, plus kind of a broad description of your approach or your main strategy for addressing the issue. And time frame wise, it's more like you should be able to achieve your mission in 20-ish years or so, 10, 15, 20, some time frame that isn't generational, slightly shorter than generational, if that makes sense. Let me show you some examples of mission statements, and I'll also, well, let me do this first and then I'll say that. So I'm sticking with these 2 entities. Oil Spill Task Force, working together to improve the Pacific Coast prevention, preparedness, and response and recovery from oil spills. So it tells you a little bit more about what exactly they're doing versus their vision statement of no spilled oil, right? So you have a better understanding of how they're trying to get to no spilled oil. They're doing it by collaborating on these specific areas of spill prevention and response. Oxfam, global organization that fights inequality and poverty and injustice, offers life-saving support in times of crisis, advocates for economic justice, gender equality, and climate action. That's a lot, but you can read that and say like, okay, I kind of get what Oxfam is doing to achieve a just, equitable world without poverty, or however they phrase that. Does that make sense? So the land bank has, I believe it's called a
Mandate.
the mandate, yes. You have a mandate statement that to me reads a lot like a mission statement. And so we will pull that forward. We're not going to reinvent any wheel in this process. If there's information that's going to inform a discussion that already exists, we're going to pull it forward. And your mandate statement, which I think is very clear and instructive for somebody who's just learning about your work, is essentially, I would call it your mission statement. Do you agree with that? You're like, yeah. That isn't to say that you might not want to revisit it and freshen it up, tweak it, and this process allows you to do that. But at least you have something to start with. So, okay, next slide, please. So we talked about vision, we're talking about mission, and we're kind of going further into the weeds as we talk about these concepts. Strategies and goals, I think of as kind of similar things, so I put them together. And these are the things that you do to achieve your mission and your vision, more detailed, achievable within the time frame of the strategic plan. Most strategic plans are 3 to 5 years. I've done ones that were 7 to 10 years. Most people are not doing 7 to 10 year strategic plans anymore because of the upending of the world that we're all in. People are like, we can plan for 3 years, that'll be good. So one decision you'll have to make is the time frame that you want your strategic plan to be. I would recommend 3 to 5 years. That would be my recommendation, but we'll have a conversation and you'll decide what it is. Anyway, your strategies and goals are things that you can achieve in those 3 to 5 years. So they're more targeted and measurable. They turn your mission and vision into specific measurable targets, kind of the end towards which a program or problem is directed. Next slide. I'm going to give you an example of the goals and strategies of the Oil Spill Task Force, so you can kind of see how this is flowing down. So they have 5. They have adapt to changes in oil movements, advance the readiness and capacity to respond to spills, deepen partnerships to expand knowledge and make better decisions, build and enhance its visibility and relevancy, nurture organizational health. Those are the 5 that they came up with. The groups that I work with, highly recommend you do not have more than 3 to 5 of these because it's a lot. And the work of your staff is the work within these categories of goals and strategies. And the pivoting from goals and strategies to the actions to implement those goals and strategies is where the staff come in, because they're the ones that are on the ground doing that work to implement those goals. And that's where sort of a annual or a biennial work plan comes in to play, where you start to document the actions that are needed in the next year or two to achieve these 3 to 5 year goals. And again, you don't have to remember any of this. I'm just
I have a
starting to Yes. Go
Hillary
ahead.
question.
Yeah.
So those 5 on the slide before, you said measurable, and I forget what the other one was. Specific, and measurable.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so now go back to the other one. There are 5 ones. How would those be? I'm not seeing measurable in there, not criticizing what was accomplished, but one of, how would we measure something? How would you measure something like that?
Yeah, and that, Sandy, you have like hit on one of the hardest things to do in creating strategies and goals is to try to make sure that they are measurable. And so I could talk for a long time about how the task force is choosing to measure or not measure these 5 goals, but I'm not gonna go there with you right now. But what I will do is when we are in the retreat and also the work leading up to the retreat, your homework that you will have is we'll talk about what a measurable goal is, what it looks like, how to help make sure that your goals are measurable. That'll be part of our conversation. That isn't to say that you might not decide on a goal that maybe isn't easily measurable, but that's a conversation that we'll have as we like lead up to the retreat and have the retreat. But that's a fantastic question, and thank you for asking that. And you are right that some of these are extremely difficult to measure, and figuring out how to measure them is a whole nother body of work too. Does that help? Did we lose?
No, I just,
Okay.
I made up word too.
That was
small.
Sandy, right? Oh, Sandy, okay, you just gave a thumbs up. Okay, did that answer your question, Sandy? Yeah, okay, thank you for asking. That's great. And keep asking these questions, because yeah, we're slowly going into weeds. Good weeds, but the weeds. Okay, no problem.
To take photos.
Oh, yeah. I asked Kate to take photos. If you don't want your photo taken, just do this. But we're not putting it on our website. It's more for just kind of documentation and that kind of thing. Thank you, Kate. Okay. Now we're going to talk briefly about actions. And actions are how you achieve your goals. And they're really specific. They're typically not actually included in the strategic plan. Strategic plans tend to be more high level. Goals are probably the most detailed thing you're gonna have in your strategic plan. Your annual or biennial work plan or operational plan is where your really detailed actions get identified and prioritized and budgeted to start working towards achieving those goals. I have never found a process where people didn't want to also start talking about the actual things they want to prioritize, especially in the immediate year after the strategic plan is being developed. So I'd envision in this process, we will probably start developing the year 1 operational plan. I don't know, do you have an operational plan that you work off right now, or do you have anything like that, an annual work plan? Anything like that?
We have annual work plan.
Annual work plan. So this process ideally would position you to basically have your 2024 annual work plan pretty well nailed down. That would be a good outcome of this process. Yes.
Just for the future in this process, will we have time or will you be guiding us through backing up or supporting goals and strategies and potentially actions with the financial capacity to achieve them? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
develop a goal, we're gonna go and we're gonna plant 1 trillion trees to
Right.
stop climate change. Do we actually have the funding to support? Do you do that? Like, because that to me is another thing with
Right.
strategic planning. You can vision and goal set and action set. but you don't really, you can't do all those, things because you just don't have enough money. So
Right.
part of prioritizing and eliminating.
Yeah.
Calls in some financial discussion.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that forward. I call it the kind of wet blanket of reality. I'm not saying it. Everybody, you need to have it, you know, and thanks for bringing that forward, not as much stuff. I'm kidding. We, trying to think of like a short way to answer that really excellent question. When we work to identify 3 to 5 strategies and goals after developing the vision, the mission, that's gonna be there's probably gonna be small work groups, there's gonna be work done in advance. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But the lens of reality and fiscal piece of it will be informing that as well. So for example, let's say there's like 15 or 20 different goals that have been identified in the process, that have been generated by the participants. And we need to whittle them down to 3 to 5 and do a prioritization. Some of the criteria selection could be, is this financially palatable or reasonable or something like that? Or what's the, budget estimate? We're not gonna get into, in this strategic plan, we're not gonna be like, this is gonna cost X dollars. Because that's a level of detail. I don't know, maybe Erin can help us with some of that kind of stuff. But that would be the level of detail of your annual work plan, like, okay, what are we gonna do this next? Here's what we have for budget. And here are the goals we need to get to, what can we actually do? So that's where those two things, I don't know, did that help?
It does,
answer the
it does
question?
kind of, yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I know,
Yeah.
I know we can't develop all the data to support each of the goals, financial data.
Right.
But at least to have it come back into the conversation periodically to where, I mean, just by having 3 goals
yeah,
may help save some money, but we have other things
Right.
besides those goals that
Right.
that happen. So
Yeah.
it's just to kind of keep that reminder.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and we do operate within, boundaries of reality and have to keep those in mind too. What I try to do in my strategic planning process is I try to keep that out as a conversation until we get to the goal section. So that I like to have expansive generative
Oh, yeah,
discussions,
I agree.
and so. Yeah, that will happen later.
Let's call it the weighted blanket, isn't that something that people need? The weighted blanket of reality.
Not so. Right, I like that better. Thank you for that, okay.
Yeah.
All right, with that, I'm gonna go to the next slide unless there's any other comments or questions. Okay. This is just an attempt to sort of show you in one little slide how vision, mission, strategies and goals and actions sort of link and flow together. And again, this is my old school task force. Again, their vision is build oil. Their mission, working together to improve the Pacific Coast prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery from oil spills. Their goals, I'm not gonna go through them again, they have 5, number 5, missed the number 5, but there's 5 goals there. And then there's actions, and I didn't include all the actions because there's probably 45 actions, multiple actions per goal. But I shared with you one goal from, let's see, which is it from, from number 1. So from goal 1, adaptive changes in oil movement. One of their goals, there's 4 of them that they have over the course of 2 years, update the task source oil movement map and data of volumes transported. So that's a really specific action that they do. They have a very detailed map that shows exactly where and how oil and other products are flowing across the West Coast. They pull in lots of data. So that kind of shows you this flow from the vision and this field action to the actual tasks that have to happen on a day-to-day basis. They get you there eventually. So that's just, does that make sense? Okay, next slide. Okay. core values, I heard somebody say when I would ask the question, what words come to mind when I think strategic planning? I think somebody said values. I believe you might have said values. I can't remember. Maybe it was Doug, maybe it wasn't. Some organizations choose to do a core values exercise as part of the strategic plan. It can be really helpful, especially with the kind of public facing part of things. Because they're really simple and they just offer a lot of clarity about like, these are the values that they guide how we do our work. They're kind of the fundamental principles by which an organization lives and fulfills its mission and values, and they're enduring. They express how you choose to act as an organization and as individuals in order to achieve your purpose. I'm going to share with you example core values. Go to the next slide. Again, from the Municipal Task Force: collaboration, leadership, service, building and sharing knowledge. That's what they came up with. And that's like right on their website. And it's really, and they really do operate from this set of values. Like I've worked with them for 15 years and just, it's absolutely true that this is exactly how they function. Like, I don't think anybody can ever question it. Well, they might, but I don't think they'd be accurate. So, yeah, those are some kind of fundamental strategic planning principles, and we'll just kind of see where I'm at. Oh, do I have a duplicate slide in there? Oh, I do. Oh, no, this is a duplicate, believe it or not. Yeah, anytime. Can you, well, just don't look at the slide. Send us out there. I'm gonna pause there and see if there's any questions or comments. We just kind of rapid fire went through some really key components of strategic plan: vision or North Star, mission, value, goals or strategies, actions, core values. There's other things, but those are kind of key components. I want to see if it makes sense, if there's any questions or comments about any of it.
So I was surprised that you have strategies / goals. I mean, I know there are tactics,
Right.
and strategies, but goals and strategies in my mind are very, very different things.
How, in your mind, how are they different? Because and I totally appreciate this.
The
and
goal is the what and the
Mhm.
strategy is the how. And
Right, so
how-
you would think of a strategy more as an action.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and I totally welcome that, and other people think that way too, and this is where there's lots of different ways of thinking about this.
And if it's just a label, that's fine, but those labels, I was like, that's
Yeah.
not something I've ever seen together. I could see actions and
Uh-huh.
strategies, but goals and strategies,
Yeah.
like really did a loop in my brain.
Yeah, no, I appreciate hearing that. Did it do a loop in anybody else's brain?
Yeah, you did for me.
It did for you as well?
Strategies and action.
Strategies. So let's couple the strategies and actions, and it's just different ways of thinking about it, but if that makes it more clear to you all, then let's do that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Can you make a note of that?
Sandy
Yeah.
had a question.
Oh, yeah, Sandy, go ahead.
Would the action items, is that included? I know we're going to go through that in this process, but will that be included in the strategic plan document that we can hand out to the public?
So that's a great question, Sandy. So that's gonna be a decision you're all gonna make at some
Okay.
point. It could, I can tell you what's typically done, and then you decide if you want to be typical or not. What's typically done is your strategic plan contains your vision, mission, goals. Vision, mission, goals, core values, some other components too, if you want. And that your actions or strategies are contained in an annual or biennial work plan or operational plan, that they're kind of two separate documents. So that your strategic plan can work for you for the 3 to 5 year time frame that is you've selected. But then on an annual or biennial basis, it sounds like it's an annual basis for you all. You're prioritizing and figuring out the funding around specific actions to implement that plan. But if you want to, and I've seen some organizations do this, is highlight some of the priority actions for the following 12 months or something after a strategic plan is developed. Just so people have an idea like, oh, vision, mission, goals, and oh, and then this next 12 months, they're really gonna be focusing on these things. So if you wanna do that, that's fine.
I thought on the, or maybe I have the terminology wrong, that on the action items, where is it that you lay out specific goals that will be accomplished in the next 3 to 5 years, specific measurable, not the higher level, but the measurable? That to me is what would be important to be included more than a 1-year work plan, but sort of the in the weeds of the overall strategic plan, what's going to be accomplished.
Right, so I think what I'm hearing from you is that, sorry, let me back up. The goals absolutely will be included in the strategic plan. Details around measuring them and achieving them can also be included in there. So that they're clearly articulated enough in your strategic plan that it's clear how you're gonna kind of monitor and measure them. Does that answer? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, these are great questions, and I know, like, this is, I really appreciate you pointing out that tying strategy to goal doesn't make sense for you, it's better with action, like, we want to all be speaking from this, thinking from the same songbook as and that's why we go through this, so, any other comments or questions so far? Brian, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe there are a couple of levels of goals, call them what you will. I sort of did a double take on your time frame of 3 to 7.
5.
What did you say, 3 to 5 years? And I totally understand what you're saying about that. But at the same time, we're doing a strategic plan in part because we want to lay out for ourselves and for our public in the reauthorization, what we're going to do over the next 12 years of the authorization. So how do you see us kind of reconciling those two things?
Yeah, and so what I would say, and if you can make a note of this, please, Kate, is the first meeting of strategic planning committee. We're gonna be noodling on some really important questions, and one of them is going to be the length of time that you want the strategic plan to cover. And it sounds like there are some very good reasons to have it cover a longer time span than what you're hearing me recommend. If you wanted to cover 12 years, it sounds like a reauthorization is good for 12 years. Is that right? So that's a really good argument for having a strategic plan that covers that length of time, but I would just, and we can talk more about this in that first meeting. I would find a way to have some built-in updates to it.
Yeah.
Because 12 years into this, it's just a long time. And things are changing so quickly, so, but that doesn't mean you can't have a 12-year strategic plan that is like, okay, every 5 years, we're gonna dust it off, have a process, make tweaks and adjustments, and go back. That could work.
I guess my suggestion is that either we do some kind of combination of those two things. Maybe we have it reiterate after 6 years or 8 years, something like that. Term of two commission terms.
Right.
But also, maybe we're talking about kind of two different things or two levels of specificity.
Right.
We could have general 12-year goals.
Yeah.
Which would be real general. And then we could have much more specific goals in the shorter term.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that is great, I think, about strategic planning is you really can't, we will make it work for what your needs are. So if it's gonna be a little bit different, then, it's easy for me to say it should be 3 to 5 years. If that doesn't work for you, that's fine. We'll do something that does work for you and serves your needs. And I really like that idea too, of maybe having different types of goals for 12 years versus 5 years. So we are gonna have that as a good discussion topic at our first strategic planning committee meeting. And then what I would suggest is that committee makes a recommendation and reasons for it, brings it to the commission, and the commission can yay or nay it and have more discussion, Does that sound like a good plan? Okay. Great. Can I keep going? I love these questions, and if I don't get to your questions, feel free to write them down. I'm just gonna do a little time check, 1:11. Okay. Gotta move along. Okay, basic strategic planning process. Yeah. New age of technology. The next few slides, I'm gonna cover this one and then Kate's gonna cover the next one. You've already heard some of this, but I'm gonna introduce some new ideas here and make sure that certain concepts are starting to sink in. This is a basic strategic planning process. This part is not new, and we're gonna change this. That's gonna go over to action, but this is a basic process for developing a strategic plan. The visioning part happens first because everything else supports your vision. The visioning processes involve what I call a visioning exercise, which we will do at the retreat. It'll be the first thing that we do. They're really, really fun. I love visioning exercises. You will too. We'll do a core values exercise if you choose to have core values in your strategic plan. We'll do a core values exercise. They're also really fun. They're sort of paper where you can fill out, and that's fun. There will be engaging key partners and others to get insights and get some perspectives on how folks are perceiving the land bank. You already have some of that information. I'll talk about that in a second, but there's going to be more generated. And then I mentioned the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I don't like the W in it. I think that's just, we can change it. We can also change that. Right, we're gonna call it this. And that's like that internal look. Really honest, but respectful conversations around the strengths of the land bank, the weaknesses, which greatest challenges that you're having, the opportunities that are out there, and threats to you. So we're gonna go through an exercise to really glean that out. There's also been this work done before, so that'll be informing. We're not gonna reinvent any wheels. We're gonna build on some really great work that's already been done in some of these areas. So that's kind of the upfront stuff that's gonna happen. Then we move into crafting the mission statement or reconfiguring the existing statement that you have. We work on developing the goals. This is gonna be done at the retreat as well. And then out of all that, you develop your annual work plan. That's just kind of a big broad brush strokes. What the next slide that Kate's gonna talk you through is a little more in the weeds on kind of how we're approaching this particular effort. So Kate, if you don't mind, I'm gonna just switch places with you. There may be more questions about this than we have time to address, and we can follow it up with emails too, if that's helpful.
And I think what would also be helpful is maybe if people do have questions, we can share this graphic, because I realize it's really teeny up here for you
Feel free to
all.
walk up to see it if you need to see it.
So I apologize for that. But what we're looking at is just a more specific kind of version of what Hillary just shared. So this is the timeline that we envision based on the process that Hillary just walked us through. So we are first proposing, we're gonna start out, Hillary and I conducting background research, and we've already started some of that work. Like Hillary said, there's already been work around the land bank survey data that Lincoln has already shared with us, and we wanna build on existing information and pull that into a background document that can support us throughout the rest of the process. We'll also look at other kind of like entities, recognizing that the land bank is extremely unique, but certainly there's things we can glean from, land trusts and other partner organizations that might have gone out and conducted strategic planning themselves. And so that's what we're gonna start out with. Like I said, the kind of product of that is just gonna be a document that reviews background information, and that's really a supportive tool for Hillary and I when we move into the next few phases of the timeline. The second phase of the timeline will be engaging key partners, and that's really going to be driven by the land bank and the commissioners. I understand that you all are already
developing a list of folks that you want to engage for that process. So we're here to support that in any way that we can. So that might mean focus groups or interviews that Hillary and I support. And that will really help us inform the discussion topics that we bring to the strategic planning retreat. I'll throw in there that you all have discussed hiring Confluence to conduct a more formal survey. And Hillary and I are really hoping that we can utilize the data from that survey to also inform the strategic planning process. So ideally, those timelines would be in parallel, and we'd be able to use that data for the retreat. That's ideally, that is obviously not necessary for a successful strategic planning retreat in the winter. But we are here to also coordinate with Confluence and support them in any way. If there are things that we're gleaning from engaging with key partners that can support them developing the survey, or maybe distributing the survey, we think that, you know, those two processes are going to be supportive of each other, and we don't want to be redundant. So that will move us into the actual strategic planning retreat. And Hillary's described a lot of what you all can expect there already, but essentially there'll be kind of homework assignments, prep for commissioners and staff to complete ahead of the strategic planning retreat. And we'll also work with the strategic planning committee to develop the agenda for that retreat. And the content of the strategic plan, which is moving into step 4 here, is really going to be built based on the data we collect from the strategic planning retreat. So I just want to be really clear that we're taking the information that we hear from you during the retreat and distilling it into the strategic plan itself, and that being our final product. And I will pause and see if Hillary has anything she wants to add and open it up for the retreat.
No, that was great, Kate. That was, and I'm hearing it here. Do we have dates for the retreat?
Yeah, like, that's huge.
Yeah.
My follow, I'm booked through the end of the year, so I need to know.
Right, so we're talking about doing that in November, correct?
I think you had mentioned
You
December.
mentioned December dates. We have the 13th, 14th, I believe.
I don't think it's been nailed down, and that was.
But it was
it should get-
December, yeah.
Was it December?
I think that December, we have it in our calendar as December, we just penciled in those days, but it sounds like it may need to be,
You know, we're gonna put a snow on the ground if history is any indication.
So I have my hand raised.
But we already have our meeting
I'll
on the
just-
15th, so.
oh, go ahead, Sandy,
Sandy?
sorry, go ahead, Sandy.
So Lincoln had mentioned that I think that the strategic planning committee was leaning more towards, instead of a community-wide survey, having a draft plan that we put out to the public and then having them weigh in. So there's that piece that maybe just letting you know, and Lincoln and committee can chime in if that's the direction it's going. Given that both Krista and I will be, December is the end of our term.
That's a big deal.
And it would be so awesome if we could close this not wait until December for our 2-day retreat. It's sounding, I know maybe we're getting a late start, but it feels like that's really late in the process. Is there a way we can ramp it up?
I think we should take this to the subcommittee, because
Yeah.
we could spend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
time talking
totally
about this.
agree.
There are a couple
Yeah.
points that have come out of this presentation portion of it, so there'll be some key questions about the list of people to be interviewed and who's on that list,
right.
what are the questions we're asking them. and who's asking the questions, so that we will, I think we need to talk about, and in terms of the public, engagement. You have worked out in this county before, and I don't know about how you've experienced Lopez, so I advocate for Lopez. Because they're all about the process, and so we have had discussions about potentially brainstorming with you guys, how to perhaps utilize some of the questions for those key partners that can be presented, be made available to the public to gain their response prior to the drafting of a document, because once it's drafted, many people feel like they've been cut out already.
Yeah.
So using an existing tool like those questions to share those, it won't be statistically significant, but it allows for participation.
Yeah.
And then coming back with a draft plan that would be reviewed by the community, and that could happen after December.
Yeah.
So those are the things that are right now are just jumping out
Yeah.
at what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get into it right now.
I agree. I'll just do kind of a really quick recap, so we all know where we're headed. That first planning committee meeting, which we need to get scheduled, we're gonna obviously visit the topic of timing of the retreat and get a decision made ASAP. So I'm hearing a call for November. We're available pretty much any time. I mean, but we'll do it when it works for this year.
Right.
Not anything, but, so that's the first one. And then what you were just referring to, Krista, one of the things that we're on task to do is to develop a 2 to 3 page, calling it an engagement plan. And so that would be something that we would bring forward to the first committee meeting.
Right.
It would be based on what we have heard and discussed in the interview here, separate conversations with Lincoln, about all of the things that have already been brought up, the interviews, who does them, what questions are asked, when does it happen, et cetera, et cetera. We would just put something together that's like, here's what we think would make sense, and then bring it forward for discussion at the planning committee to finalize and then start making it happen. So that will be another topic at that planning committee meeting, is really nailing that piece down. So thank you, Krista, because that's helpful context. We just have, we have about 7 minutes. If you don't mind, I'm just gonna zip through a few final things. We are gonna try to catch the 155 ferry. Otherwise, we have to wait till 3:40.
And I have a call at 1:30.
And you have a call at 1:30. So we're gonna be done at 1:30, and I hope you don't mind, we're not gonna be rude, but we are gonna zip out of here to just the ferry, okay? But I just want to talk about roles and responsibilities really quickly. We've talked about, there is a planning committee. Raise your hand if you're on the planning committee. Excellent. Thank you, planning committee members. There might be some folks on the phone. Thank you if you are. Your responsibilities are you're asked to participate in 3 2-hour meetings. That committee will be tackling lots of things, the stuff I just talked about, but also primarily leading the drafting and finalization of the retreat agenda. You'll also be serving the liaison between us and the rest of the commission and the staff as well. In terms of like, if we need to kind of get a yay or nay from the commission on direction we're heading, including like sharing up the draft agenda, the planning committee members, we're gonna ask that you sort of serve that liaison role. And then last but not least, work with us through the process. You'll be our primary points of contact, so that we can be efficient and get things done. And you'll be the main people that we're communicating with and looking to for decisions to help us move forward. And if that means that you need to go to the commission or check in with a staff member, that's great, but you'll be kind of working most directly with Kate and me. Okay, next slide. The commission and the staff, you have similar jobs, slightly different. First is basically what you're doing right now, being here, listening, participating, sharing ideas, really appreciate that in the lead up to the retreat. At upcoming commission meetings or potentially staff meetings, there may be some briefing out about where things are, some questions asked of you to kind of weigh in on things like the draft retreat agenda, that kind of thing. So just be available and engaged in that. So we're asking you to do that. You may be asked to help engage some of the key partners that we want to bring into this process through one-on-one interviews or other ways as you're comfortable, but it would be really important and I think helpful, especially for commissioners, to engage in that process. It can help build relationships.
It can have all kinds of really positive results and may surprise you with how positive they can be. So putting in a plug for that, doing advanced homework before the retreat, there will be a packet. There will be what I call thinking homework, questions that I want you to start thinking about. There may be some written homework and getting graded on it. It's just trying to get people coming to the retreat, being on kind of a similar plane in terms of being prepared. So reviewing the retreat packet, participate, we talked about participation, engaging, sharing thoughts, making sure if things aren't, you disagree with something, like we invite you to please share that. So please participate and engage post-retreat, potentially to review the draft strategic plan, not to the point where we're nitpicking and rewriting it 15 different times. That's not happening. But there will be an opportunity to make sure it was in, or if there's any red flags or critical errors we've made. And then for the commission, I'm assuming it's the commission that approves the strategic plans. That is correct? Yes, so commission only, you will formally approve, adopt something, the strategic plan. Next slide. And then us, obviously, we're going to lead the process. We're going to work primarily with the planning committee. I've already shared that. We will design and facilitate a retreat, and it will really be fun and great, I think. And we will also draft and finalize the strategic plan with input. The retreat is where 98% of the content of the strategic plan will be developed. So when you're reviewing it afterwards, it shouldn't be that hard of a review. More like, do you like how it lays out on the page? What pictures might you want to put in here? Because the content will already have been discussed and agreed to. That the strategic planning retreat is critical because that's where the content's getting generated.
I'm just gonna add.
Yeah.
Just let's add to the agenda of the first committee meeting that we talk about where we want to host the retreat.
Yes, yes, and planting a seed for everybody on the call as well. Ideas are very welcome. Just as a point of reference for the Preservation Trust, one of the board members offered up property that he happened to have that had a building on it, and that's where the retreat was hosted. There were no accommodations, people had to kind of find other accommodations, but it really worked fantastically. So if there's anybody has space that could potentially accommodate a couple days of retreat, not necessarily hosting people overnight, and we can do something else, just planting the seed if there's, that might be out there, I don't know. And then, yeah, this is like, let me just do a quick, we're 129. We've already talked about this. We've already discussed that we're going to talk more about this at the planning committee. So can we skim past this? Okay. I'm going to end by sharing some pictures. Oh, thank you so much. So nice to meet you, Amy. I'm going to share some pictures from previous strategic planning retreats that we've facilitated, just to start getting some images in your mind of what to expect. And then we're going to end. Okay. So there's going to be a really clear agenda, and it's going to be dynamic. And there's going to be celebrating of accomplishments, and there's going to be activities where you're moving around and not just sitting in a chair. Okay, next slide. Such as small groups standing around discussing goals, for example, what's important, what isn't, prioritizing items, bringing things back to the group. So small groups will definitely be part of the retreat. Next. There may be artwork. This is our Wilsville Task Force Strategic Planning Retreat, and one of the groups came back with this. They're talking about their core values, and I mean, they came back like in tears. They're like, "We do not want to ever see this." Like it was just. There may be some opportunities for kind of creative art. I don't know. Next, this is my former business partner. There will be sticky notes. They will be multiple colors. They will get grouped. You'll be moving around, moving stickies around. Next. More stickies, more people. Go back one. These are the Department of Ecology oil spill program staff prioritizing their goals. Oh no, they're doing their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities for exercise. That's what that says. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities for exercise. That's what that is. So you'll be doing something like that. Next. This is from the Preservation Trust retreat. I know Kristen knows, Laura Todd, that she was my partner facilitating that retreat. Next. Same retreat, small groups, working on actions. This is they're actually discussing what were the priority actions for the next year. Next. Yeah, that's it. So I just wanted to kind of share with you, it should be a fun retreat. We also did walking meetings where I sent 2 to 3 people out on walks for 20 to 30 minutes to discuss certain questions and come back and report out. So you will not be sitting in a chair for 2 straight days. I guess that's my take home. Okay. I feel like we have pretty clear marching orders. We are gonna kind of summarize what we heard today and what the next steps are. We need to get a planning committee meeting scheduled. We're gonna change some terminology based on what I heard here. We're gonna get working on completing a draft background memo as well as that engagement plan and bring that forward to the first planning committee meeting. Are there other kind of next steps, key takeaways that anybody wants to share out before we wrap?
Nope, good job.
Thank you. Thank you all for hanging in there. Thank you all who are on, sorry, I'm gonna look into the owl. Thank you for hanging in there in this digital space, because I know it's really, really challenging and we really appreciate your time and your sharing out of thoughts and ideas and questions. So you're all free to go. Thank you all. Bye. Sorry to run out of here, but you want to catch that ferry. And Lincoln.